Did a man really die from laughing after watching a comedy show? And why did his wife send a thank you letter to that very same show? In 1975, a man sat down to watch a comedy show. 25 minutes later, he was dead. Not from violence, not from poison, not from a hidden assassin. No. Alex Mitchell died from laughing. He was watching a British comedy series called The Goodies, and one particular episode made him laugh so hard that he collapsed on the sofa. For years, it sounded like one of those strange stories people repeat because it feels too bizarre to be true. But almost 40 years later, a medical clue appeared inside Alex Mitchell's own family. A clue that may finally explain what really happened in that living room. And yes, his wife really did write to the makers of the show, not to complain, but to thank them. Why? We'll come back to that. And later, we'll also look at the actual comedy scene that was said to have killed him. But before we get there, we need to ask a stranger question. Can laughter really kill? Death by laughter sounds impossible. Laughter is supposed to be harmless, healthy even. The thing doctors tell us we need more of. But history is full of stories about people who supposedly laughed themselves to death. Some are almost certainly legends, and some are medically possible, if the person already had a hidden condition. One of the most famous ancient examples is Chrysippus, a Greek Stoic philosopher from the 3rd century BC. According to one version of the story, he saw a donkey eating figs, told someone to give the donkey wine as well, and then laughed so hard at his own joke that he died. It is difficult to know how much of that story is history and how much is ancient comic exaggeration. But that is the problem with death by laughter. It sits in a strange place between medicine, folklore, and the kind of story people want to believe. And Alex Mitchell's case would become the modern version of that same mystery. There are also stories of people dying after laughing at plays, jokes, films, or absurd situations. Some reports claim laughter caused a heart attack, others suggest suffocation. Some are so old that they are impossible to verify properly. In 1989, a Danish audiologist named Ole Benson was reportedly watching the comedy film A Fish Called Wanda when he laughed so intensely that his heart rate rose dramatically. He died during the film. Again, the laughter may not have been the true cause by itself. More likely, laughter was the trigger. That distinction matters, because most people do not die because something is funny. They die because laughter changes the body. It changes breathing. It changes pressure in the chest. It can increase heart rate. It can trigger stress responses. And in a person with the wrong hidden vulnerability, that can become dangerous. Which brings us back to Alex Mitchell. But before we return to his living room, there's one more strange stop to make. Because years before Alex died watching The Goodies, another British comedy group had already turned this exact idea into one of the most famous sketches in television history. Part 3. Monty Python and the Killer Joke. In 1969, Monty Python's Flying Circus aired its first episode. Inside it was a sketch called The Funniest Joke in the World.
In a few moments, he will have written the funniest joke in the world.
The premise was simple and completely absurd. A man writes a joke so funny that he immediately dies laughing. Then his mother reads it. She dies too. The police arrive. They also die. Eventually, the British Army realizes the joke has military potential. If a joke can kill instantly, why not translate it into German and use it as a weapon? It is classic Monty Python. Deadly serious narration, ridiculous logic. And yet the sketch works because it exaggerates something people already half believe. That laughter can overwhelm the body. That something funny can become too funny. That comedy, taken to its most absurd extreme, could become fatal. It was a joke about a joke that kills. Then 6 years later, Alex Mitchell sat down to watch The Goodies, and the joke was no longer just a sketch. March 24th, 1975. Alex Mitchell was a 50-year-old bricklayer from King's Lynn in England. That evening, he was watching The Goodies, a British comedy show known for surreal sketches, slapstick, and very physical humor. The episode was called Fu Kapers. It was also known for a ridiculous fictional martial art called Eki Thump. Instead of swords or fists, the weapon of choice was a black pudding. The scene that reportedly sent Alex Mitchell into uncontrollable laughter involved bagpipes, martial arts, and a level of British absurdity that is almost impossible to explain without seeing it. So now, as promised, we come back to the clip. A small warning. The scene may not look deadly. In fact, that is what makes the story so strange. It looks silly, almost harmless, exactly the kind of thing a comedy show was meant to do. But after the clip, we'll return to the real mystery, what may have been happening inside Alex Mitchell's body while he was laughing, and then we'll try to understand why his wife wrote that unexpected letter.
Here we go.
A boomerang seems to leave the sketch entirely.
Here. Hey.
It is silly, chaotic, and very British. And, according to the story, this sent Alex Mitchell into uncontrollable laughter. But what happened after the laughter? According to the account, Alex Mitchell laughed for around 25 minutes, almost the entire length of the episode. Then he suddenly slumped on the sofa. He had died. At the time, the explanation was simple, but incomplete. A man had laughed so hard that his heart failed. His widow reportedly later wrote to the makers of The Goodies, thanking them for making his final moments happy. It is a strangely moving detail, because this story is often told as a bizarre death. But for his family, it was also the sudden loss of a husband, a father, and a grandfather. And for decades, the story remained exactly that, a strange headline, the man who died laughing. Then, in 2012, the story changed. Alex Mitchell's granddaughter, Lisa Cork, suffered a cardiac arrest. She survived, and doctors diagnosed her with long QT syndrome. Long QT syndrome is a heart rhythm condition. It is often inherited, and in some people, it can cause dangerous abnormal heart rhythms. The triggers can include exercise, shock, sudden noise, excitement, or stress. In other words, strong emotion can be enough. So doctors looking at Lisa Cork's case realized something important. If she had inherited long QT syndrome, then Alex Mitchell may have had it too. Undiagnosed, invisible, waiting in the background. And on that night in 1975, laughter may have been the trigger. Not the true disease, not the whole explanation, but the trigger. Alex Mitchell probably died because his body carried a hidden vulnerability. The laughter was the spark. Long QT syndrome affects the electrical system of the heart. The heart does not only beat, it beats in rhythm. That rhythm depends on electrical signals moving in the right order at the right time. In long QT syndrome, part of that electrical reset process takes too long. Most of the time, a person may feel completely normal. They may have no symptoms at all. But under the certain conditions as mentioned, the rhythm can become unstable. And if it becomes dangerously unstable, the result can be cardiac arrest. That is why Alex Mitchell's story is more than just a weird fact. So can you die from laughter? For most people, almost certainly not. Laughter is not a weapon. Monty Python's killer joke remains fiction. But laughter is not separate from the body, and in rare cases, when the body is already vulnerable, laughter may become the trigger for something far more serious. Alex Mitchell became part of a strange historical category, somewhere between medical case, television legend, and dark British absurdity. A man who laughed at the goodies, a family mystery that lasted almost 40 years, and a death that sounds impossible. Sometimes history is not stranger than fiction. Sometimes it is just waiting for the diagnosis.